make sure the sound's working. Oh man, somebody already posted a question. Jeez.
Damn.
On it.
I have a hard cutoff of 9.
Okay. Well, it's 4:30, so you got 4.5 hours.
I like how Mel's dumbass starts actually responding to adjust the time zones. Hey Mel, make sure you adjust your fucking retainer before you respond. Technically speaking, on the East Coast is 3 hours ahead. Mr. Davis.
Okay, just checking. Okay, looking good. Well, I think you shouldn't have any trouble, Mike, because it looked like we have a pretty short list tonight,
Yeah, it does look
relatively
like that.
speaking, and a bunch of it's like a big table and a big picture. So should be a short one.
All right, you ready to take our world tour with the names again?
Oh yeah, we actually got a good variety of names on this one.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
By the way, have you kept up with Dragon Ball Z Abridged?
No, I haven't.
They finally just finished the Cell Saga. It was really good.
I got a lot of that to catch up on.
Oh yeah, it was solid. Amazingly accurate. Like they parody it and it's really funny, but it's also like actually what's going on in the story.
Yeah, totally.
Like a weird balance to strike.
They put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah. All right, well, ready to rock?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Folks, the webinar today is brought to you by the movie Geostorm.
Ooh, did you see
out
that?
in theaters? Never, hopefully. And I saw a bunch of it without sound because the guy in front of me on the plane, like in front and diagonal, was watching it, and I was like, I can't tell what's being said, but that looks so stupid. I don't want to know what's being said.
I do that sometimes too, where you're like watching it silently, just creeping on other people, whatever they're watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't look like a standout.
Yeah. Gerard Butler was in it, I think, so.
Oh man, did
Did
he kick someone into a geostorm?
Oi, fuck off. I shared at the conference in Amsterdam, I shared your joke, Jason Statham as Jason Statham.
It's true. He just plays the same guy over and over again.
It's so funny because like we were at dinner and I was like, yeah, like we were talking about Jason Statham movies and how ridiculous they were and how awesome they were. And I was like, did you guys see The Meg? And everyone was like, no, should we? And I'm like, of course you should. It's amazing. And one guy was like, well, I heard it has like not such good reviews. And I'm like, pause. Let me tell you what it's about. It's Jason Statham and a giant shark. Of course, it's not going to have good reviews, man. That's the whole point.
Yeah, it's what you think it is. But come on, 2 giant sharks. In fact, spoiler alert.
Yeah, super spoiler alert. Boy, we only killed one of them fucking cunts, man.
Somebody's gonna watch this and be like, "Oh fuck, I was gonna see that." Oh, thanks.
You know what? Spoiler alerts are valid for like the first 3 weeks of movies out. Maybe. If you really care about spoilers, you better be there on opening night, opening weekend, maybe the week after. After that, sorry, dog, the shit's out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Most of the time I've actually like been really good, because like when you pull up your news feed on your phone, you get spoilers for like sports and movies and all sorts of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm really good at like if I see the title or if I see like the final score, glaze over it, and then I usually forget by the time I want to actually rewatch it.
So I was talking to Crystal yesterday. It's like, do you want to watch a movie, honey? And she's like, yes. And I was like, we were talking about something, and I was like, oh, that reminds me of the movie Warrior. Have you ever seen it? And I have like a distinct memory of watching it with Crystal. And she's like, no. And I like recant the plot. I'm like, it's 2 brothers. It's MMA movie. Tom Hardy's in it because we were talking about Tom Hardy. 2 brothers in. And then she was like, no, I've never seen it. I like described what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, nope. As soon as we start watching it, 30 seconds in, she's like, oh, I have seen this. I'm like, Jesus Christ. fried the brain with the doctor stuff.
Her brain is full of gobbledygook at this point.
Yeah,
Like weird
actual
rashes and
useful information. We're like making fun of someone that can save lives with their hands because they don't know what the fucking warrior movie was.
What a chump.
What an idiot. All right. Shall we?
Yes, let's do it.
Our first is Mariana Perdomo, all the way from Venice, Italy. Oh, just kidding. She's Hispanic. Hola. Perdomo sounded Italian.
Yeah, could go definitely
could go either way. Hola, she says, on week 8 of a 10-week mass and feeling pretty fluffy. That's good.
Normal.
I anticipate that I'll end this on mass 1. I assume it's a template user. I'm on the powerlifting hypertrophy week 3, and I was wondering if I should move to maintenance, new base, during deload week or wait until after deload to move to maintenance. Thoughts? Thank you. Oh, I have an exact answer. I would move to maintenance halfway through deload week.
Mm-hmm.
That way you build muscle when your muscles are still recovering, but halfway through deload they're really kind of not. And then I think new base is really good to start maintenance.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think if you want it to be real simple, like you don't want to fuss too much, you can just get a nice clean switch at the end and just go into maintenance when you start your new training program. But I think what Mike said's great too.
Yep. All right, Chandler Dion. This is a male or a female?
Honestly, sometimes I don't know. And like on the forum, you can see if they have an avatar, you can see. And there's been a couple instances where I was like, that is clearly a female. And then they have a male picture and I'm like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Oh, well. Hey, guys. What recommendations or tips do you have when doing a mesocycles of 3 to 1? Due to work in my schedule and what works best for me, I use the MPT full body 5-day week template. We'll be starting a mass soon. Just wondering the best way to progress on a 3-week accumulation block.
It's largely the same thing. You just have a different timeline. I mean, so essentially, if you have a 4-in-1 and you're now switching to 3-in-1s, more or less, you're doing the same idea of progressing from MEV to MRV, but now the jumps tend to be more aggressive each time. That's really the only reason is because you have less time to make those adjustments, but other than that, it's largely the same. You might find that taking really big jumps in volume, like 2 sets per exercise, per week, may not allow you to make as large of jumps in intensity because the back end sets will start to tail off if you try to really ramp up the intensity and the volume at the same time. But honestly, I mean, there's some fine tuning that we could talk about, but it's mostly the same, just on a shorter time scale and therefore bigger jumps week to week.
I'm a little bit interested about this saying, I use the male physique template full body 5-day a week. That's a 4 to 1 paradigm. So I'm wondering, Chandler, how you're adjusting the 3 to 1. I mean, hypothetically, so to sort of preempt that, what I would do if you still want to use the actual template is type in, just start on week 2. So week 2, week 3, week 4 deload. That would be the best way to run the MPT on a 3 to 1 paradigm.
Yeah,
that's what I would say.
Yeah, he might. Who knows? Like maybe he's just using the structure, like just the exercise, generation and general progression. But yeah, what Mike said.
That's what I would say. It's my really shitty Tom Hardy impression. He's so shifty, Tom Hardy, isn't he?
He sounds really derpy in the Venom trailer. He sounds like real stupid and goofy.
I've got a parasite. You're like, are you like Rip Torn from? Or not Rip Torn. The guy from the Men in Black.
That was Rip Torn. Yeah.
No, Rip Torn was the guy in charge of shit. The guy who the Edgar suit. Edgar.
Oh yeah, the guy from Law and Order: Criminal Intent.
I like that. A pet cat. That's my favorite line from Men in Black. It means the world to me.
Yeah.
I love it. I fucking love that movie. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Like your comment to my last joke was, yeah.
I was gonna say something, but then I forgot.
Then you're thinking of a pet cat, huh? All right. And the like roaches start coming out of his fucking hands, and the guy's like,
yeah.
okay.
We're talking about Tom Hardy sounding stupid. He just sounds like Mushmouth. He's just like, I don't know if you want to
He always sounds like that, dude.
He's like
He
Rocky.
always sounds like that. He sounds like that in Warriors, the same shit.
Yeah. I think that's just his default American accent. He just thinks that we all.
Yeah. He's not wrong. You know, I mean, truth be told, like if I swung with men, I would. Oh, Tom Hardy's like super high on my list.
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't know what it is. Ooh,
because he was Bane.
The fine man. Yeah. You mean Santa Claus? Batman.
Was that actually him speaking, or was that a voiceover?
Yeah, no. I think I don't know, man. I just sure hope it wasn't him.
They obviously like modified his voice quite a bit
for sure, because he had the dildo mask. All right, Chandler Dion, answer that one. Okay. Daniel Hacker
has several.
To rehash last confirm your points from last week's question regarding cardio increases and calorie reduction alterations, you would say start with a moderate calorie deficit and minimum cardio as you move from MV to MRV in your training, or close to MRV. Okay. As diet progresses, aim to increase cardio so far as it does not interfere with your quality of weight training. Yeah. When you feel your legs starting to fatigue and or you grow tired of the amount of cardio you're doing, then make a calorie reduction. But until such time, keep the kcals the same and let the training volume and cardio volume drive the calorie deficit downward. Did I nail it? Super close.
Close.
I think it's totally fine to cut calories, but you have to be mindful. So it's not you increase only cardio until you hit the specific top end. And it's not you increase calories until you hit the specific top end, or rather bottom end of like, I can't eat enough food anymore. You just have to sort of qualitatively figure out which one seems best based on quantitative and qualitative feedback. So your legs are never like, there's never a time when the cardio dose is definitely affecting your legs versus last week when it definitely wasn't. It's going to be an incremental effect. So some amount of cardio will make you some bit of tired for legs. And as long as that's in balance with how hungry you are for food with food, that's okay. So towards the end of like a bodybuilding contest prep, you're going to be dead tired from cardio and starving to death because you've cut everything. But those are in balance. What James and I are saying not to do is get to a place where you're starving to death with how little food you're eating, but you're doing no cardio, or get to a place with cardio when you're definitely feeling the quality of your workouts, but you haven't cut your food at all. So I think what ends up being is you get very similar increases in cardio and decreases in calories, but it's an individually specific thing as to what that balance is for you. Some people can handle 45 minutes of cardio every day, and they feel like it's barely anything, and they love their food. Other people just really aren't that hungry. They're not huge eaters, and they fucking hate cardio, or it just affects their training more and their perception of effort more. So they would much rather just like drop their food a bunch until you basically have to ask yourself the question, would I rather keep eating the same food and do more cardio, or would I rather do more cardio and do less food without having to resort to more cardio? And I think the answer to that question really determines in any week or whatever which one of those you add. And if the answer is kind of like sort of in the middle, just do a little bit of both. James?
Yeah, and not to be dismissive, but I think we've answered this like 3 weeks in a row, so I'm ready to move on. Sorry, I'm just cutting it off. I mean, I feel like with this, we've beaten this to death. Like on the cardio,
we beat it pretty good. And Daniel, if you want to look, scroll back through some of the stuff we said, hopefully it'll clear some things up for you. But there's definitely that. The example we used last week was on the cardio side, like when you're getting to the point where you like don't want to add any more cardio, it's time to start cutting calories. But we could have also used the example from the other side too. Like you're cutting calories, and when you get to the point where you really don't want to cut calories anymore, then you do more cardio. So it's both, but they really should be done in a balance it's individual. Like, what do you think? And remember, the answer isn't, well, neither. Well, of course, fucking neither. Nobody wants to cut any calories.
Mike, you're doing the opposite of cutting off. You're
sorry. Fuck you, James.
Said, let's move on, and you just kept going.
Let's see. You've answered. Oh, here's another one for you, James. You've answered this question before. from someone else, probably 5 other times at least, how to eat during a deload week on a cut. Keep the calories the same as the previous week. Prior to the deload, raise them a bit, maybe 200 kcal to account for maintenance, something else. So let's talk super basics. It's really not important unless you do something extreme. So let's cut out 2 answers right away. Deload on a cut, you don't want to go on any more of a deficit. And some people, you think, well, that's a ridiculous idea. Some people think, okay, I'm on a cut, which means a deficit. But since all the deload days are such light training or off and they're barely training at all, I should cut my calories even further to adjust for that. Do not do that because you're going to drop no fatigue whatsoever, and you might even lose a little bit of muscle too. On the other hand, your deload week is not a vacation from your diet, so don't go ordering pizzas left and right because that's going to set you back another 3 weeks, and then it's all going to be for naught. So as long as you're somewhere in the middle, you're fine. From there, James and I actually might each have 2 different approaches to take. I think because you're doing less activity, but because you were hypocaloric with more activity, actually just not changing the diet at all from the last week before is totally cool. I think that's absolutely fine. Recalculating your maintenance entirely is also okay. It's a bit more laborious and has more error, but it could be a little more accurate. But honestly, it's going to bring you to very, very close numbers. What I would say in the end, it matters the most on a deload week during cut is this. You don't want to seem like you're super hungry and like literally wasting away in a deload. It should feel like more food than usual because it's less activity than usual. On the other hand, if you're feeling nice and full and like, oh, deload, really replenishing, that's not the point of a deload on a cut. So don't eat that much food. James?
Yeah, actually, we totally agree on this one. So because you're reducing your physical activity by anywhere between, half to 2/3 of what by 2/3 of what you would normally do, just eating what you were previously eating the week before is usually a very good proxy just as a result of you reducing your training load. So, and it's also very practical for most people where you don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything new. Just keep doing what you were doing. You just slightly less exercise, good to go. I find that recalculating maintenance for that week specifically is you don't really get anything. There's no tangible benefit, and it's a lot of work for you. So,
yep, agreed. All right.
The unfavorable trade-off of work and time spent to outcome gained.
Yeah. Next question is: do you take out cardio on a deload week during of a cut? Yeah, you can reduce it. I would say cut it by about half.
Yeah, just take it down.
Yeah, take it down. Don't cut it out. Let's see. Last week, you said Transfer of Training is a good book, but it has some dated points. I'm going to start reading it. There are a few editions of the books, so maybe the most recent ones will have updated some of these older points of view. Can you both recommend any other books that specialize in training strategies for athletes / how to make athletes the best they can possibly be? James?
Yeah, so a couple things. We make very similar book recommendations all the time, and this is where I think people maybe don't understand where we're coming from. So when Mike and I make book recommendations, we usually say something like, BAMPA, periodization. We'll say Science and Practice of Strength Training. We'll say any of those types of books. And those books are deep. But the problem I think that people have is they read those books or they start reading the books and it doesn't say, do this squat at this intensity, do this exercise progression, right? It's a very fundamental and thoughtful, structured approach to training, and people just get bored reading it, right? So if you're looking for like nitty-gritty stuff on like how to get the best bodybuilding routines, or if you want nitty-gritty stuff on exercises for powerlifting or addressing imbalances in powerlifting, improving your deadlift, if you already have a good bench, that's going to be a book where you have to find basically like a niche, like a specialist, somebody like I'm just going to throw a name out there. I don't mean to call attention to them, but like Lane Norton or somebody like that, or like a Dan Green, where you say, oh, okay, here's somebody in powerlifting that I can really get the nitty gritty of what I want. If you want to understand the fundamental basis and the science behind training and why we do a lot of the things we do, then you go to the books that Mike and I generally recommend all the time. And I think there's just kind of a difference there, maybe a misunderstanding where people are like, well, that didn't tell me what I need to know about powerlifting. Well, go read a book on powerlifting, right? If you want to know about like the science and practice of training for sport, then there's some really good resources for that, but it is more generalized and it's not going to be like, okay, here's the exact exercise and progression and exact things from week to week. You know what I mean? So, you know what I'm saying, Mike? Am I rambling here? But
totally. No, 100%.
I think some people are like they think it's too boring, and it's not. They don't get the immediate gratification of like, I want training for this very specific instance, and they don't get that right away.
Yeah. My recommendation is Super Training. If you haven't read it, read it. It's not all correct, but it's just, so at this point in your advancement, it's mostly great. At this point in the advancement, it's great to just be exposed to different ideas. I sure hope you read Brad Schoenfeld's hypertrophy textbook. It's a must. As a matter of fact, on the subject of books, I would subscribe to James Krieger's Weightology website, because he does a ton of reviews on there and a ton of articles, and it's just like the greatest goddamn thing ever. So I would subscribe to that and read it like a book. All the old posts.
And Brett Contreras' website is also excellent.
Yeah.
I always forget what it's called, but it's something to the tune of like scientific strength and conditioning. Something.
Oh, yeah. So strength and conditioning research.
Yeah.
Is what it's called. It's not, Brett Contreras is not associated with that anymore.
Oh, he's not?
No.
Oh, I missed that.
But that other guy who does fine work.
Oh, okay. Well, from the time that
Still
I was following it, it was always excellent, but I haven't looked at it for a little while.
All right. And then he says, also, I don't know how many sports science podcasts you guys already have booked, but here's a list of the following people you must get: Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, Ralph Macchio, any member of the Wu-Tang Clan, one of the master trainer gurus from Gold's Venice, or just from the pro bodybuilding community, and troll them without them even knowing they were being trolled.
No, like we don't. Yeah. The thing is, like, Mike and I both. I don't know if we've maybe directly talked about it, but I know we're of the same opinion. Like, being PhDs in sport physiology, sometimes for other people that immediately kind of generates a boundary territorial kind of thing where they're like, oh, here's this like fucking nerd guy who's going to judge me for everything that I do for myself, for my clients, or my athletes. And so we always take a low profile. If we're meeting with new people who are coaches or who have been in the field, it's never like, we're never analyzing what they're doing directly. We're never like coming at them judgmentally. It's always just, hey, I'm just here to, see what you're doing and just hang out and have a good time. Because like it's easy to troll people, and like I'm sure anyone could troll me for how many times I stutter or when I burp when I'm speaking. You know what I mean? It goes both ways. So it's one of those things like, yeah, we have a PhD and we could easily nitpick people for doing silly things, but that's stupid and it's the waste of everyone's time. So it's funny to think about like, trolling Jean-Claude Van Damme. I agree, that's funny, but
I wouldn't troll him. I would be in fucking awe.
Yeah, exactly. We'd be in awe. We would be like, oh my god, this guy's been a movie star and a martial artist forever. Like, that's so cool. I'm not going to sit there and be like, so you do this like progression in your training, fucking idiot. You know what I mean? It's like, okay.
Is cocaine a form of training?
Cocaine, maybe.
Jean-Claude Van Damme does a lot of cocaine.
Pre-workout cocaine.
Sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're not big into the trolling. And actually, when we did it with Stevie P, he kind of indicated, before we started, he was like, "Are you guys going to ask me like really hard questions?" We were like, "No, dude."
See, this is not the place for hard questions. To quote Waterboy, "Watch where you're going, Sergeant Stutter."
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's a two-way street, right? Where like you bring somebody into your wheelhouse and troll them, but then like they bring you into their wheelhouse, and it goes both ways. So mutual respect is always good.
Speech. All right. Here we go. Alex P says, "Hey, big guys."
Big boy.
I have a question regarding the periodization long-term hypertrophy plan that you laid out in the Minicut ebook that Mike also presented for the Revive Stronger seminar this summer. I made a screenshot from the Minicut ebook to clarify what I meant. I hope that is cool with you, of course. My question is, how do you fit deloads in there, especially at 0.6? 0.6 is a maintenance phase. So the deloads do not have to be synchronous with the phases. Some of the phases are many, many months long. Some of the phases are 1 month long. Some of the phases are 2 weeks long. If a phase is 2 weeks long, you do not need to deload at the end of the phase. These are just nutritional priority and training priority phases, but you can train through some of them. So, for example, there's like a phase. Let's see, where's a good representation? 6 and 7. Right, 6 is going to be very low volume training. 7 is going to be still pretty low volume training. So you can do one mesocycle that goes 6 weeks and does all of 6 and 7, and you could deload at the last week of 7 and then hit 8 again. So your deload basically is you have an accumulation to deload paradigm, and you try to fit it as best as you can to the phases, and then you deload at the end of each one. Simple as that. And usually you deload right before the start of the next nutritional phase, but not always. So you just kind of try to fit in as best you can.
Yeah, and I think a good opportunity to reevaluate like your pre-planned and auto-regulated strategies, where you might have a short stretch of kind of easygoing training, and you can make a judgment call at that time if you need to deload or not. Where you say like, hey, actually, this last I did 2 weeks of like pretty easy stuff. I really don't feel like I need to deload going into this next one. Or you might be like, maybe that little bump in intensity and drop in volume kind of blew my knees up. Maybe I do need to deload before I go into this next hard training, and that's a good way of thinking about it. You don't always have to stick to the pre-planned, although pre-planned is generally your go-to. There's a balance between the two.
Yep. All right. Daniel Lingemann says, for someone planning to have surgery to correct gynecomastia, would it be better to do this at the maintenance after a cut or the maintenance after a mass? It seemed like a cut would make it easier for them to identify all the tissue that needs to go, but I was concerned that I may be more vulnerable to muscle loss during recovery. The muscle loss vulnerability is not something I would concern myself with at all. Your muscle, after a period of several weeks of downtime, comes right back. Doesn't matter when it happens, unless you're contest lean or something. That's just nonsense. It's almost never going to be a concern. As far as the what they find tissue, blah blah, man, I don't fucking know. James, do you know? I don't. This is out of my wheelhouse.
Actually, I was going to ask you, Mike. Do they cut the pecs for that, or is it?
No. Surface surgery, very quick recovery.
Okay, so then I would say it's probably not a big deal either way. I can't imagine one being better than the other. I would say maybe post mass, just because your fatigue state is low and your calories have been high for a while. But that's drawing straws. I think.
So I'll tell you something I know pretty close to a fact. After a mass, so gynecomastia reduction surgery is often done on people with pretty high body fat. Is by no means remotely any of the people, not even 1% of the people that get gyno reduction surgery is people who even train with weights. Just people have fucking bitch tits, man. And they're just tired of having them, and they're like 25% fat, but it also looks like they have titties. They just get them cut out. Surgeons will find everything they need to find. You can't hide that shit. There's also, breast tissue looks completely different in surgery than fatty tissue. They're professionals. They'll find all of your shit and they'll cut it all out. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. Also, another interesting concern is after a cut, you may be in a low immune state to some extent. I definitely wouldn't want to go under a knife like that. So I would actually just do it at the end of a mass, is my best guess. But I would actually just discuss that with your healthcare provider. They could absolutely know that. So,
yeah. I wonder if that kind of stuff is covered by your normal insurance, or is that like a cosmetic
thing? It's almost always cosmetic.
Yeah.
Your insurance could be good enough to cover that, but yeah, it's technically cosmetic. It's not. It doesn't threaten your health whatsoever. So.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, Christian Weissman. Right? Did I say that right?
Like a V.
Weissman. Okay. Dear Docs, I want to set up my own home gym. I got a used Olympic barbell with some Malenko plates for a good price.
Nice.
Built my own power rack out of stainless steel.
Oh, my man.
Damn. And built a weightlifting platform out of wood. Also have a cheap pair of adjustable dumbbells and a sturdy bench. What I'm really missing are cables and machines, especially for working my bake. What would you recommend to add? I have enough space, maybe a workout station like this. For reference, I want to work on the male physique templates, full body, 5 days a week, to keep the exercise selection simple. So that particular thing that you brought up is a very piece of shit looking machine that I've used many, and it will break within 10 seconds of you using it. And also, who the fuck does pec deck? But what my recommendation would be a combination lat pull down and horizontal cable row station. That's going to get a lot of your needs because you can rig the cable rows to do upright rows and bicep curls, and then it's just a matter of buying different attachments. And the lat pull down is going to be its weight in gold. That's my. It's relatively cheap. James?
I was gonna say look at Rogue because they make little add-ons and modifications for pulley systems to add on to squat racks and
Oh,
stuff.
cool.
Um, since you made your own, who knows if they're compatible, but just check it out. There might be something that you could maybe modify yours and it would work. But I know they make a lot of little add-on accessory things for cable movements. So you can do like a basic pull down or some basic rows. I've even seen ones now where they have like a thing where it even has the pin pull and it has rollers and you can slide it up and down, do different angles on your squat rack. It looks pretty neat. So I would check that out. The thing is, for pushing variations, if you got barbells and dumbbells, you can get by. I mean, granted, a little extra does go a long way on that, but you can get by. I think where you're really going to run into a problem, and this is the same problem I have working out at home, is your vertical pulling options. Your options are basically pull-ups and some grip variations, and that's it. And so you might have to start using other variants. Like I started doing pullovers this mesocycle just for a little bit of variation, which is not my favorite movement in the world, but it's okay. And I think that's where you're going to run into some trouble. So check out Rogue. I know they make some kind of cool adaptive pieces.
Mm-hmm. And then he says, also, could you talk a bit about the pitfalls of training at home versus training at a commercial gym, e.g., postponing a workout, not getting into the zone, establishing a ritual, etc.? I'll go first here because I think James has more to say. I'll just say my little bit.
Yeah.
You just have to make sure that you have to, you have a schedule to keep, and you know when you're going to train. And the gym should not be next to a television. And you go in there, you put on your headphones, you take your pre-workout, you do what needs to be done. And then you go back to the rest of your house. So the gym is kind of like a sanctuary area, like a special area where you only do gym stuff. And then the rest of it, and the gym time is a special gym time where you only do gym stuff. And then everything's fine. If you have trouble pushing yourself outside of a commercial gym, man, that's just going to be a challenge for you. But James, what do you think?
It's been a blessing for me. I love it. And I know Mel loves it too. So for me, what's really great about having the home gym is you can just, like, for me, that's the first thing I do. There's no way I miss it. I never miss it. There's never any hesitation on my part because, I don't want to walk over to this gym or have to walk twice as far to get to this other gym that has the right squat setup or this and that. Just roll out of bed, pre-workout, go. And I fucking love it. And if you can't work out in the morning, maybe that's not the schedule that you'll have, but it's always there. And so any inhibitions about having to go through kind of the routine, the travel, the prep, it doesn't really matter because everything is just right there. If you got to take a dump, you can just run up, for me, it's my gym's in the garage. So I run upstairs, take a dump and go right back. I can listen to my podcast. I can listen to audiobook, and I work from home. So for me, it's kind of nice because I can answer emails. So for me, I get into a kind of a good routine on Mondays and Thursdays. That's our RP days, where I'll do like a set, answer 2 emails, do a set, answer 2 emails. And some people need to be more focused, and that's okay. But it's great because for me, I don't have to fuss around so much. It's just right there. I don't have to worry about what equipment I do or don't have. It's just, this is what I got. This is what I'm working with. Keeps the exercise selection relatively simple. Keeps the workouts really simple. I love it. The trade-off is that you don't get a lot of variation in the movements that you use. So if you want to get some different back movements, that can be troublesome. If you wanted to do something other than squats and stiff-legged deadlifts, it gets a little bit more troublesome. You have to get a little more creative. But for the most part, I think it's a huge net sum positive. There are some downsides, but after we're done with the webinar, I'm going to go and do some jump rope and kickboxing stuff on the bag. I already lifted this morning, had plenty of time in between. I'm going to get my cardio session. No excuses. Otherwise, I would have to go to a place with a heavy bag or a kickboxing session, and I'd be more prone to missing it either just out of laziness or out of hesitation. So, it's great. I actually really like it. There are some trade-offs, but I think it's totally worth it, especially if it helps you really stay on schedule.
Yeah, man. You said it all. I got nothing to add.
Cool.
P.S. Dr. James, last time you asked me how I managed to integrate a table in my post, I just took a screenshot of my Excel file, uploaded it to Imgur, and included it. Just a cheap workaround.
Oh, that's smart. I can appreciate that. Very good.
All right. Ido Dagul has taken a break from leading the armies of orcs across Middle-earth to ask us a few questions on training.
That's right.
Hi there, docs, and happy Sukkot. think I said that right. I guess it was another Jewish holiday that I missed.
Oh, I have no idea.
Ooh, no, honey, it's a Jewish holiday. Today, maybe? Is it today? Sukkot? Yeah. Crystal goes, it's like Yom Kippur or something like that.
Sukkot, it's that game in the newspaper that people play
Yo,
with numbers.
Sukkot, I was good at that game. My uncle, he made a lot of money in Italy with that game, but the mom found out about it, and I went to South Philly. Yo, fuck you, whatever. By the way, Mike Tyson's trainer, do you know who that is? Teddy Atlas or whatever?
I know of him, yeah.
You got to listen to him on Joe Rogan. It's unbelievable interview, but he talks like he is South Philly. James, he said whatever like 1,000 times. And it was always like, yeah, he does jump rope or cardio, whatever. And it was always like, my God, like, how do you manage to just always thread it in?
That's incredible. Awesome. I'm going to have to listen to that one.
Ask Mike why he's not in Hut.
Mel wants to know why you're not in Hut. I'm not sure what that means.
Sukkot, you're supposed to build a hut and stay in it.
Oh, yes. I'll just go for the straightforward answer because I don't believe in God.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Cut and dry.
Just at some point that just had to get out there. All right.
I don't believe in
I don't believe in roofs, man. Structures, bro. All right. Hi there, docs, and happy Sukkot. Ido, happy Sukkot to you as well. My last question pertains to an injury, but also to the workarounds and training itself. If you feel it's outside your realm, I understand. All right, let's find out. What would be the equivalent duration of a normal 3 to 4 week maintenance phase for taking time off completely if one is constrained to do so in terms of resensitization, obviously while accepting it's suboptimal?
So I guess I don't understand, because are we saying taking time off completely because you can't train? And if that's
there's
so
like how long would you take off to get the same amount of resensitization that a 3 to 4 week?
That's really hard. That's really hard.
I would say like 2.5 to 3 weeks.
I was going to say 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, like the super low volumes, they really don't keep you sensitized at all. So you desensitize fairly quickly, or resensitize to volume fairly quickly. So I would say 2 to 3 weeks, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Number 2, programming pure horizontal and vertical push days as opposed to focus days with mostly one and little work of the other. Any downsides here that I couldn't think of? Perhaps it doesn't achieve synergistic effect. I don't know about synergistic effect, but you can fatigue a certain group of muscles or a certain group of motor units so much that it's really like enters the realm of functional overreaching and could be a little bit more likely to be injurious. Like, if you do like 15 sets of vertical pulling in one workout, you might be like aggravating some tendons there with like lat insertion, and particularly the distal proximal long head of the tricep, some shoulder stuff too. Like you just keep moving your shoulders the same way, could just get annoying. So I think like a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio of rowing to vertical pulling, or the other way around, is always good. And also remember that when you're not rowing heavy, you're rowing light, you get a sort of active recovery benefit to rowing that will make you better at rows when you come back to it versus not at all. There's also some technical transfer. What I mean is this: if you do a day of tons of bent rows and just a little bit of vertical pulling, and then you do a day of tons of vertical pulling and just a little bit of rowing, the rowing on the little bit day is going to help you recover, I think, probably even a little bit more for rowing than not doing nothing. And it also is going to reinforce the motor patterns of rowing, so that the rowing, when you row heavy, isn't as awkward and it's more productive, and it makes you stronger over time. So I would say it really does pay to do some transfer of training, kind of work the other angle that you're not working in a 1/3, maybe 1/4 volume assortment. James?
Yeah, I would say, especially if you're just choosing one movement too. So let's say you're just doing underhand pull downs and you're trying to get all of your sets of vertical pull basically just from, underhand pull downs in one session. Now you're actually going to start to see a limitation of intra-session MRV, particularly because your lats are big ass muscles. If you just did something slightly different, I hate to use this example, but it's just off the top of my head. It's like a pullover. You can still train the lats and innervate a slightly different region, or emphasize a slightly different region within the lats, still train them really well. And then some of those fibers get a little bit of a break. So now you can actually do more training volume, even of the same vertical pulling, instead of just trying to blast one movement specifically, which is, like as Mike said, is going to be more prone to wear and tear, but also might hit a point where, yeah, for those particular motor units that you just beat to death, they might actually be hitting their MRV, whereas a big chunk, because your muscles are actually pretty large in terms of like cellular area, you could just train another part of that muscle doing something else and keep training and keep getting better. So I would say what Mike recommended was good. There's no need to cram it all into like one session and one movement in particular.
Here's another consideration too. When you're rowing, and when you're vertical pulling, it's not just your lats that are getting trained. It's the teres major, which is actually a very big muscle. That's why I've got a major. It's the rhomboids. It's the middle traps. It's the lower traps. It's the erectors. That's a huge part of your back. And remember that training frequency has been shown in multiple reviews of literature to matter at least somewhat. So let's say you only train back twice a week and you pure vertical, pure horizontal. All those other muscles, you're technically only training 1 week at this point in any way that's overloading. That's not optimal. But if you train them at least a little bit twice a week, that's already better. And if you train them 3 times a week, that might even be better. So just biasing, but not biasing completely, I think is the real ticket to a lot of sports science dosing questions. It's almost never about moving completely away from something, just emphasis, de-emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, I've picked up an acute injury in my left wrist. Jacking off.
Yeah, you jack.
No, you've been jacking. The Gohan and the Dangling King.
Dude.
Don't even start. Picked up an acute injury in my left wrist. The very last session push in my previous meso, which I'm not sure of its magnitude yet, had to throw away the bar with 100 kilograms from the lap to the floor. Damn.
Oof.
And tweak something after failing lockout on incline bench. Must have exceeded tricep MRV in the previous session earlier that week. Yeah, it was dumb. Still shaking my head at my dumb self. Agreed. Haven't trained since. Took a week off to travel and did some light bodyweight stuff. Going forward, my next meso, which is planned to be a moderate 8 to 12 hypertrophy, I feel as though supinated and non-neutral wrist. Exercise like barbell curls and upright rows are a no-go. Can't tell for sure until I actually test it out and find a workaround.
Yep.
It could also be that many upper body compounds will be problematic, and I'll have to lighten the load and or go for more of a high rep metabolite worst case scenario. Beat the living shit out of my legs in the meantime. Any suggestions from you guys would be highly appreciated. I think those are all great suggestions. What I would say is if something is even remotely bothering it, but you can find a wrist position or an exercise or a rep range that doesn't bother it at all, you just put in one mesocycle of shit that doesn't bother it at all. And I can almost promise you it's going to completely heal during that time. And then it's like it never happened. Don't be like, I have to do bent rows with a supinated grip, or I have to do bent rows with a pronated grip, because I don't care if it hurts, I just have to do it. It's going to cost you way longer than a fucking month. And listen, variation's great. You can get a ton of great training in when you're fucked up and still be like just almost not interfere with your long-term plan at all. So absolutely stay away from shit that hurts, and really do diligence to finding out what hurts it and what doesn't hurt it before you start your mesocycle.
Yeah, it's going to be on a guess and check basis, so there's no need to catastrophize your program as it currently stands. It's going to be just one of those things. You're going to do your normal thing. If something hurts or your wrist is becoming a limiting factor, swap in a new exercise. And, for example, if it's bench, if it's regular medium grip bench, try wide grip or close grip, see if it's manageable. If none of them are manageable, try dumbbell, right? Try something else, and then just take it from there. That doesn't mean you have to abandon everything that you've been doing. Just take it on a needs basis and be smart. Usually lowering the absolute load is a good idea. Something with a little more free range of motion or natural wrist position, like a dumbbell or easy bar, might be better for some things. But other than that, just do your normal thing and don't plan for the worst necessarily. Just take it on a needs basis.
Yep. Marcia Belay says, "Hi docs, are you guys as stoked for the Venom movie as I am?"
I can't tell. The previews have been really goofy, like where he's talking about like the turd blowing in the wind. I don't know. It looks cool. Like the visuals look cool. I like Tom Hardy. I actually didn't hate Spider-Man 3 with Toby, where they had the Venom storyline there. I didn't hate it. People did not. People were very critical of it. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible though.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm undecided on Venom. It looks cool. I'm gonna go see it. I don't know if I don't want to get my hopes up because it could be like total stupid at the same time.
It's gonna have the usual Hollywood bullshit that I fucking hate, like the evil guy is a fucking CEO and capitalism is bad, and I hate that shit. But it's also the CEO is like an Indian guy, and he's all like new fucking Silicon Valley Indian guy. Like those people make everything that's beautiful in this world. You fucking hypocritical piece of shit. They made all your fucking video cameras. They designed Microsoft Excel. Fuck you. I hope he kills Venom. But anyway, since he won't and he's evil or whatever, I'll go see it because Tom Hardy's hot. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure. And is it going to be tied into the Marvel universe?
You know, it could be one of those standalone jobs where they awkwardly try to tie it in later.
Because some of the Marvel stuff is still under Sony, and then some of it is with
Trippy, really.
Yeah, so I don't know. I could be maybe not saying this correctly, but I know some of the licenses are held by Sony, and then some of them are on the Disney side. So who knows? So if it's on the Sony side, it might not be tied into the Marvel Cinematic Universe of like the Avengers and all that other stuff. We'll see.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be interesting if like various companies could buy like various heroes, like just patent, like just buy their copyright, like oh man, can we get like the Hulk in the next movie? Like actually he's owned by the original Sega Genesis. Yeah, I know, it's really strange.
Yeah.
Or like the only ones allowed to use them.
The KKK gets Captain America. Like, damn it.
We don't call him Captain Grand Dragon now, god damn
it. Like, damn. All the heroes, they got Captain America.
Yeah. They buy what's his name? T'Challa. What's his name? Black Panther. Like, come on, KKK. They're like, we're just trying to make for $1 billion.
You could have had like Daredevil. Anyone, why did you have to say Cap?
Oh man, Captain America, dude. The KKK. I was just talking about this with someone. They have like really weird names for their staff. It's like the Grand Dragon and the Grand Wizard and shit.
It's really like fantasy strangeness.
Trippy, because it's like you imagine showing up to a meeting and being like, "Yeah, I fucking hate all the other races. This is gonna be sweet." And they're like, all right, announcing the Grand Dragon. And you're like, what? This is a joke? Seriously?
Yeah. Some fucking dorks made that shit up from like whenever it was formed in the 1950s or 60s and just kept rolling with it.
They were like, it's going to be cool if we're actually a Grand Dragon. They were like the predecessors of modern nerds.
Yeah, some D&D white supremacist guy was at the
I guarantee you that's mutually exclusive.
Yeah, like most people who play D&D are very open to like other everything. Yeah,
they would love it. They don't think like racial diversity is far enough. They want species diversity. They want like orcs and elves in real life.
So when I play with my group, we're all white humans. Like, this game sucks. There's no orcs or elves or anything. Like, no, of course not.
That's a sign of degeneracy. You're like, by the way, sorry, real quick on the political front. I noticed that I always like comparing the extreme right and left because they're basically the same people and just different belief systems. I like their not code words, but their little buzzwords that they use for when they're just frustrated and can't tell why they don't like something, but they don't like it. So in the extreme left, it's problematic. Like, be like, this movie is really problematic. It's like, okay, you don't even know what you mean by that. And in the extreme right-wing circles is degenerate, like the degeneracy. They're like, what do you think about cultural degeneracy? It's like, what do you mean by that? They're like, I don't know. It just like gay people weird me out. Like, yep, that's about as far as you've ever taken that thought.
You mean things that you don't like?
Exactly. That's degeneracy. Be like, you live in a trailer park. Like, right. You got me there.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's sweet.
There was a really funny, like, I don't buy into anti-conservative or anti-liberal stuff, but there was a really funny anti-conservative meme going around where it was like, they're like, no, something to the tune of like, oh, Justice Kavanaugh like has these rape accusations, like, not buying it. Like, magic God and his magical son come to Earth and create like all this stuff. Like, that seems legit. It's like
36 years ago.
They're
too long for that to be possibly.
Yeah.
Like 4,000 years ago. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Again, I don't buy into any of that, but it was fun.
Makes plenty of sense both ways. All right. Mercia Balai. Actually, fuck. Sorry, just to keep it balanced on the little show here. There was like they did a survey of like people who shared like the hashtag of like stop Kavanaugh or prevent Kavanaugh. And they asked a bunch of them, like, so what did he do? And they're like, I legitimately have no idea. They're like, why are you against him? Like, because other people said that he was bad. You're like, dude, you're the shit. Don't let anyone stop you from forming an independent and objective opinion, except for yourself.
Also ironic that like, so he's meant to be like a legal appointee in our justice system, right? Which states that you are innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, oh my God, dude, that's lost on everyone. That's
right.
Like
it's like really ironic because first of all, he's like already just assumed guilty. And look, so here's a good example. Bill Cosby just got his sentencing, right? And I think it was like 3 years or something.
3 to 10.
3 to 10. He went to trial. It's done, right? Like the justice was served in this case. You can't just say like, oh, because someone was accused, they are immediately guilty. Like they still are, they still have their due process, right? You know, and even if the evidence seems overwhelming, like they're still entitled to that due process. And if you honor the system and the country that you live in, you should really take it seriously and not just be like, oh yeah, somebody said this, then it's obviously true. Like, I don't know.
I will quote what I believe this is a ridiculous quote. It's actually very true. I think it's from Air Force One with Harrison Ford, where they said, I think this is Air Force One. Might not be. It might be from one of the 1600. What is it called? Murder on 1600 with Wesley Snipes, which is a fucking sweet movie. They said the office of the presidency is more important than any one president. And that's so completely true. Like, you do realize there's 40 something other you motherfuckers, and there's going to be hopefully 40 something other of you after this. Like, there's no one person more important than the institutions that literally keep our structure, society, and liberty alive. Like, if you don't believe in due process and evidence for justice to be served, like, I don't care how righteous your cause is, you're almost certainly on the wrong side of that debate.
Yeah. And who knows? He could be guilty, but that needs to be proven. And the burden is on the system to prove it. 100%. Right?
If you want to change, and this is like the fucking sad irony of SJWs, they're like, fuck him. We don't need, believe the woman. We don't need any proof. And it's like, okay, like when you guys are toasting someone, that's totally cool because you're probably right and he probably is a scumbag. But let's see who's in power now. Oh, yeah, Donald Trump. And if we have a conservative Congress and they no longer need the burden of proof because you guys changed the law that doesn't need to happen, now what? They're just going to arrest you for crimes that aren't even crimes. And then goodbye system that we've had. You know what I mean? Like, nobody likes playing by the rules until you let people not play by the rules. And then you really don't like people not playing by the rules. Like, that's why we have rules.
There's the saying in MMA is everyone has a game plan until you get punched in the face.
That's what's up. That's great. Mike Tyson might actually have that quote until Evander Holyfield punched him in the face and he was like, fuck, that applies to me too.
You're like, oh shit, I better bite this guy.
For sure. I gotta get the fuck out of here. All right. Mercia's actual question after the Venom one is it likely that humans downregulate metabolism during cold seasons to reduce energy expenditure similarly to bears going into hibernation? Could it be possible that, let's say, 3,000 kcals to be maintenance during summer and a surplus during winter, even if body weight and activity levels are about the same? If there is such an abnormal fat accumulation during winter, could it be metabolism downregulation or a shift in P ratio to allocate more calories towards storage instead of building new muscle tissue? P.S. The Dark Lord compelled me to ask this question, as he compels us to ask all questions, by the way, Mercia. Duh, what do you think? You have your own willpower? Thanks as always, guys. My first guess is an I don't know / probably not, and here's why. In our entire evolutionary history, more or less, versus the last couple of maybe not even 1,000 years, the purely seasonal adjustment of metabolism did not have to occur, irrespective of how cold you physically were, because the seasons meant you were fucking cold because you were fucking cold because you barely had any fucking clothes and or you had a fucking mammoth skin and you were still fucking cold because it rained on your dumb ass and then there was wind, so you were cold, and then your metabolism starts to it totally. But if you're not actually experiencing cold / food shortages, your metabolism probably has no good reason to adjust. The only other way that such a month-long sort of annular adjustment of system of metabolism could work is your body would somehow have to detect the time of the season, and maybe that could be done through sleep-wake cycles in the sun. That gets awful tricky. I'm not familiar with humans having a whole lot of that going on. So my inclination is to say that metabolisms don't really adjust unless they're presented with actual metabolic challenges, not just the sort of antecedents of those challenges that you never detect. So basically, like, unless you're fucking cold, your body doesn't make any adjustments to the cold. If you're indoors, and it's like my dad will say, like, Yusha, why are you wearing a t-shirt when you're going somewhere in the winter? I'm like, because I get into a fucking car that's heated. I go into a 7-Eleven that's heated. I get back to my heated car, and then I go to a friend's house that's also heated. There's no part of this where I get sick. There's no part of it where I'm cold for any long amount of time for me to actually reduce internal body temperature and put me at risk for anything. So it's just one of these things where I think in the modern age that just straight up doesn't apply, James.
Yeah, so there's a couple things I want to touch on. I don't think there's any seasonal. I'm willing to go a little further than Mike and say I'm pretty confident that there's no seasonal adjustments to metabolism. Metabolism is mostly governed by the amount of calories that you eat and your physical activity levels. Those are probably the biggest two heavy hitters outside of genetics and stuff like that. So that being said, what happens during the winter? Well, first of all, if you spend a lot of time outside, you actually start increasing your energy expenditure because you have to maintain thermal regulation, right? So you'll start shivering, stuff like that. So your energy expenditure actually goes up, which would be an increase in net metabolism. On the other hand, why people might think that is because in the winter, people are less inclined to do physical activity. They stay inside more, don't go outside, don't walk around, don't do stuff.
Could be a neat reduction.
Right, it's a big NEAT reduction, and there are seasonal changes in sunlight, right, which may also lead to further decreases in physical activity. So people won't go outside as much just because it's dark. So you have the combination of it's unpleasant to go outside because it's cold, so they're not going to do as much physical activity, and you have daylight, changes essentially, which both compound physical activity.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't really see anything there.
Funny enough, during winter, you actually see cabin fever, which is when you like just get crazy amount of NEAT because you just fucking can't stand sitting around anymore. That kind of goes against the argument. Like winter cabin fever should almost be ideal for humans. Like, oh my God, we got a warm, safe place. We just fucking sit here. Seems like humans still want to jive during the winter. Nobody gets cabin fever during the summer. So it's one of those things where I just don't think there's any, like James said, much evidence for it at all.
Yeah.
And then he says, thanks always, guys. You are totally welcome. Thank you so much, Marcia. All right. Philip Skleba. James, hit it.
Sklebs.
Sweet. Hey, docs. Number one, I recently watched Jared Feather's Training and Dieting Optimization Revive Stronger presentation and noticed that during resensitization phases, he has his athletes increase the load 10% per week. In the male physique templates, load during this period is increased at a 5% rate. I was wondering what the rationale is behind the discrepancy. So I'll just make a little public service announcement real quick, and we'll see if James has anything to add. All of the RP coaches have a little bit of a different twist on the basic concepts of scientific diet and training that they apply to their clients. And that's number one. So that could entirely explain the difference. I'm not sure it does. What else explains the difference potentially is in a coaching one-on-one setting where you interact with people that are relatively higher level than potential average template consumers, you can be more aggressive because you know your clients and you know that there's feedback and always time to pull back because they interact with you on a weekly, if not more often basis. For template customers, we almost always choose the more conservative route because they're template customers and they're doing this all by themselves. Conservative and not injured is way better than aggressive and injured. So I think that probably accounts for most of the difference. But it could be a technical difference. I think that actually is a better question for Jared Feather himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only thing I would add is that not only are the more conservative approaches safer, but they're more generalizable as well across the wide population that would use the male physique template or the women's physique template.
Yeah, because some people want to get noticeably stronger on the resensitization phase, and some just don't. They're pure bodybuilders. So the 5% really splits the difference between there, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, like Mike said, any one of us are going to do things marginally differently from each other, but those marginal differences make up such a small percentage of total success that's not, it really comes down to more issues of personal preference for the client themselves and how they respond to things. Really is how it kind of boils down.
Yep. All right. Oh, he follows this up with, would 10% jump still allow individuals to discover their maintenance volume? Rep performance increases or stays the same each week of resensitization? Yes, although it's a little bit more challenging that way.
Yeah.
Or is this more aggressive progression used for when the trainee has their MVs pretty well? Yes, because Jared knows most of those people's MVs. It's is used during a shorter 2 week long resensitization mesos and the 5% is used for longer 3 to 4 week mesos. Yeah, I'm not really sure that's true. Again, that's a better question for Jared than it is for us, how he particularly does things.
Yeah.
I will say this. All resensitization phases must be low volume, but the manipulation of intensity it's not even unclear as to what the correct answer is. There may not be much of a correct answer. They just mean a very broad range of kind of like, if you're lowering the volume, it really doesn't matter what the intensity is, sort of things. So there's that. Or what I'm saying is, I don't think it matters much which way you go.
Yeah. So you could make an argument for higher intensity by increasing the intensity more substantially. You might be actually able to drive the actual volume of training even lower. And still maintain your gains, but that does come with some trade-offs in the form of wear and tear and things like that. So, but can we say for sure either way? No, we can't.
For sure. Number 2, continue with the resensitization theme. If a bodybuilder were on a time of particularly stressful work/life situation, what is the difference between running 2 resensitization mesocycles in a row versus 1 resensitization mesocycle followed by a traditional strength mesocycle? As opposed to what I'm also asking is, what really are the practical differences between a strength mesocycle and a resensitization mesocycle for bodybuilder with no intention of diving into powerlifting? Is volume ordinarily higher on the strength mesocycle, or the progressions slower? So the strength mesocycle pushes you harder. A resensitization mesocycle is designed to literally keep your gains, keep your muscle, and do the smallest amount of training that does that. A strength mesocycle might be of similar volume, but it's almost always of either higher average intensity to begin with or a more pronounced intensity ramp up. There is a correct answer to your question, though. If a bodybuilder were in a time of a particular stressful work-life situation, what is the difference between running 2 resensitization mesocycles in a row versus 1 resensitization followed by traditional strength? Because that athlete's in a particular stressful work-life situation, we can rule out the running of a strength mesocycle because that's a bad idea. Remember, for a strength mesocycle, you need just as little fatigue as you need for a hypertrophy mesocycle. In fact, you can gut out a hypertrophy mesocycle by just doing more sets. Even if you're not at your best, you still get good muscle growth, even when you're stressed out. But a strength mesocycle, a real strength mesocycle, requires you to push hard relative to your abilities. And if you're stressed out, you may not be able to do that, especially not be able to do that safely. So I'd say if you're in a particularly stressful work-life balance, it is highly optimal to just do 2 back-to-back resensitization measures, not try to push your strength to stratospheric heights. In addition to that, because it's a person who's just a bodybuilder and who's not interested in powerlifting, like you say, then there's really no upside to doing a strength meso. James?
Yeah, I was going to say, it really also just boils down to a specificity violation where you're not training for bodybuilding at that point, and you're incurring risks not associated with bodybuilding from the increased intensity. So it's not that strength training is bad for bodybuilding. It just comes with risks not associated with bodybuilding, therefore making it a bad trade-off. So you don't get that when you run the 2 resensitization phases. I mean, I'm willing to say a little, I mean, the volumes would be similar, but almost certainly more for most people when comparing a resensitization to a strength phase, or at least there's certainly more progression of volume, whether it's from actually adding sets or at least from the intensity progression. So it's just unnecessary, right? So if you blow a pec because you were trying to bench 315 for a 5x5, you know, it's like, okay, that was cool that you did that, but now you can't train your pecs anymore, and you're going to push back your next competition by probably a year. So, you know, it's just one of those, like I said, it's an unfavorable trade-off. It's not inherently bad in terms of like strength training for muscle retention, but it's a sport specificity violation at that point.
Mm-hmm. Number 3, with a stipulation that I have read the mini cuts replacing conventional fat loss phases section of the manual, what are the downsides to slightly shorter masses and keeping body fat within striking distance of a 5 to 6 week mini cut to 10% fat? Example, mini cut 5 to 6 weeks, followed by massing for 10 to 12 weeks, followed by resensitization for 3 to 4 weeks, repeat indefinitely. I think the downside is that you miss out on the momentum of massing. As you mass for longer, your strength, you stabilize your exercises, you stabilize your technique, and you get stronger and stronger and stronger. And that strength is both fueling your hypertrophy gains to a small extent, but to another extent, your hypertrophy gains are fueling the strength gains, and that's basically, it's like a symptom that you're getting bigger. I think anytime you do a mini cut, you're disrupting a process that's going well. If you're having great training, if you're still within the 10 to 15, even 10 to 17% body fat range, your call of saying, okay, I'm ending this mass in order to start a mini cut is in question, because on the bright side, you have all this momentum, your training's going great, you're hitting mega PRs, you're getting bigger, you're getting stronger. On the downside, there is no downside because you're not fat enough yet to do a downside. Remember, the purpose of mini cut is to resensitize you, but you don't need to resensitize every 10 to 12 weeks. You're not desensitized. It's almost like saying, why don't we have a work week that's 3 days long and then we take 1 day off versus doing 5 days long and taking 2 days off? Well, like, why the fuck do you need a day off after 3 days of work? You don't. And then, you know how, like, and here's actually a really good analogy. You guys know how when you do like some kind of project at work, by Wednesday, you're really hitting a fucking groove. You're like recording podcasts, or you're like writing papers, or you're like really jiving with your team on a certain project, or, you know, you really planned out this itinerary. And all of a sudden people are like, you know, like the short weeks, like people like where vacation starts on Thursday, you're like, all right, see ya. And there's nobody does any work for the rest of the day and then the rest of the week. Fuck that, dude. You want to have a good work week so you really hit momentum. And then only by Friday, when you really need a break, does the break come. So what's the downside for mini cutting so often? You're basically like in this bum rush to try to get to back to 10% for no defensible reason other than you want to be leaner all the time. And if you want to be leaner all the time, that's a good reason if it's a good reason for you. But it will cost you muscle in the long term because you're essentially cutting off a perfectly decent re-rolling process and inherently destabilizing it. James?
Yeah, I was going to say it's similar to like filling up your gas tank every time it gets to half instead of, you know,
yeah.
quarter.
There's no downside of that if you like pulling into gas stations a lot.
Yeah, at that point, it's just going to take you longer to finish your road trip.
Yep.
So,
yeah,
this is, you know, and I'm not trying to attack the question, but this would be like an instance where I think this is when people are too fat phobic to the point of
totally
never making progress, right? And this is something that I joke about all the time, but it's true. And I think this is one of those things where people are, again, and I'm not accusing you of this. Don't.
Yes, Cleves might not be accused of this, but other people have been. And just careful that you don't enter that realm yourself.
Right, exactly. And so I think people are trying to find little hacks here or there where it's like, oh, I can get up to like just this much and then get back down to here and then go up. But then it's like your wave is almost flat. It doesn't have any peaks or valleys, and you don't make any net progress over time. So you do have to have some peaks and valleys in there to have a net trend upward. That's the idea.
Yep. Another thing is, remember, folks, when we make resensitization phases and mini cuts are not these magical things that make you better for no goddamn reason. They are used only because they have to be used. If you ask me what is the ideal number of mini cuts to do in a mesocycle, the ideal is 0 because you never have to do it. Mini cuts are used so that you can keep your momentum rolling because you're too much of a fat piece of shit, or you've developed too much resistance to anabolism. And ideally, you just wouldn't use any of them. So that then, because that's not realistic, the realistic answer is use as few of them as you have to in order to get done what you need to get done. Because if you mini cut a ton, your total time spent cutting is just super fucking high for no goddamn reason.
Yes.
All right. Number 4, Dr. Mike, I really enjoyed your lecture on considerations for the assisted athlete. Oh yeah, it's a webinar I did. Unfortunately, I was only able to view the webinar replay and not participate in the Q&A. What I would have asked if a larger caloric deficit could be used on mini cuts in conjunction with AAS and still potentiate mass gains, or is it likely that AMPK and other catabolic regulators would be driven too high and hinder the subsequent mass phase? The answer is both. You could probably get away with more of a mini cut caloric deficit, but there is still a limit, because if you mini cut hard enough, then yeah, you're literally just shooting yourself in the foot because you're elevating catabolic regulators instead of resensitizing. And he says a better question might be how much more of a caloric deficit could utilize deficit. What the fuck? There's a word missing there. Better question might be how much more of a caloric deficit be utilized.
Could be utilized.
Some slang. Yeah, could be utilized. Or could you recommend a new rough target rate for fat loss during a mini cut with AES in the picture? This is so funny. He goes, I asked Broderick, but he essentially told me that mini cuts are stupid. James, you should meet Broderick.
Well, yeah, it's good because this is like good exercise because you're getting different opinions from professionals, right? So like, we don't necessarily think that they're stupid. They're a tool that you can use, but Broderick's perspective is different, and that's okay. We can have opinions.
And I consult with Broderick on a weekly basis, and he also tells me they're stupid. So I think we can split the difference and say that they're not something you want to use, but something you might have to use every now and again. If we're going to split the difference between Broderick and myself and James, but I'll tell you this: by the time you use AAS, you should be resistant enough to hypertrophy, and the whole process should be difficult enough that you're back into the same ranges as naturals. So anabolics essentially are a crutch for you to even get remotely natural-like gains.
I'm drawing a blank. What does AAS stand for?
Anabolic androgenic steroids.
Oh, okay. That's kind of what I was thinking, but I was like, I don't know if there's something else that I'm.
It's ass spelled really wrong.
So,
but anyway, it's one of those things where just take the normal ranges we recommend in the books, make them a teeny weeny more. Not even. Just use the aggressive ends of those ranges, and you're totally good to go. That's it.
Right on.
All right, Thomas Jankowski. Yep. Hi, chaps. I hope this finds you both well. Let's not fuck around with the usual small talk, although I think this is exactly what I'm doing.
Oh, he just goes right into it. Let's not fuck around with the small talk. It's like it's a text submission, so it's like there's not even any small talk. I think this is really funny.
I love it. What are your thoughts on Dr. Brian Haycock's hypertrophy specific training? The funny last name.
I don't have an opinion. I'm not familiar with it.
Well, we're about to have one because you're about to be told what it is. It's essentially an 8 to 12 week program focused mainly on mechanical load progression, essentially going in 2 to 3 week cycles of 15 rep work, 10 rep work, and then 5 rep work, followed by a complete deload strategic deconditioning. I imagine you motherfuckers have heard of it before. And sorry if you have already commented. I've also seen variations where you could adjust your reps every week. 15, 12, 10, 5, 10, 8, 5, etc. Could one still increase volume or proximity to failure and have great success with this program? Probably not. Would you justify your volume progressions over these load progressions? Yes. Volume is more important than load to hypertrophy. So Dr. Brian Haycock's program is not a hypertrophy-specific program. As a matter of fact, it's much more strength-specific.
I was going to say it's like a blown-out phase-potentiated DUP strength workout.
Yeah, it'll get you fucking strong. And no shit, it's based on mechanical progression because that's what it'll accomplish. It unfortunately does two things that are not great. By including too much emphasis on low rep ranges, it artificially limits volume and thus growth. And the phasic way in which it does that violates the second part of the overload principle, which is progression. So you're not actually progressing in volumes, you're regressing in volumes, which makes you fucking strong because it's basically a peaking program, but it's sure as hell not going to get you the biggest you can be. If you do pretty good volumes with it, you get strong, you'll get big, it'll work. It's a fine program. You can do better.
So it's funny. So I'm looking at the example he says where I've also seen variations where you could adjust your reps every week, 15, 12, 10, 8, 5. So here's like food for thought, right? We're saying volume is the most important thing. How do you match volume week to week on the week that you did 15 reps versus 5? So even if you just did one set of 15, immediately you'd have to do 3 sets of 5 just to match, right? Yeah. What if you did 4 sets of 15, right? So that's 60 reps. Now you got to do 12 sets of 5.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And let's say we adjust for load and stuff. Now we're doing 8 sets of 5, maybe. 8 sets of 5. Fuck me. 4 sets of 15 is not that bad. 8 sets of 5 is the fucking end of humanity. So it's one of those things where it's literally just the recent, and I wouldn't even say it's recent, the recent exclamation point that Brad Schoenfeld, his colleagues, and many other researchers around the world in the last 2 years have put on the volume thing is really important to note. The Get Strong Over Time crew was right, but the Get Strong Over a Mesocycle or 2 crew was not right. Not at the expense of volume. Volume is king in hypertrophy. Now, James and I are not going to be so hard-lined to say you have to progress in volume from MEV to MRV. Maybe not. Maybe you can stick at MAV. Maybe you can have an average high volume and then progress in intensity through a mesocycle. Fine. But we're sure as hell not going to say that a program that regresses in volume is optimal for hypertrophy. That's absurd.
Yeah. I think people just forget that strength is a byproduct of hypertrophy training. It's not the goal, right? Yeah. It's something that happens and is a pleasant surprise where you're like, oh, cool, this is great. And actually is a burden at some point later on in your career.
Totally.
But again, this idea of like trying to proxy strength as a substitute for volume is really just not great on a number of levels. And try it. This is one of those, like, if you don't believe us, if you think we're really far off on this whole volume thing, try it. See what happens, right? how much could you gain doing 6 sets of 15 versus trying to squeeze in like 10 sets of 5? Good luck.
Yeah,
See what happens. You know why I say that? Because I've tried to do it. We've all tried to do it.
We've
all
all
made that mistake, and then we realized like, hey, this isn't working, and then it generated questions and food for thought. We looked into it, and then we said, oh, we've been fucking this up the whole time.
Yeah. If you Thomas, if you want to see a pertinent study of this kind of in principle, look up it's a 2-year-old study at this point, 3 years old maybe. Brad Schoenfeld did one of volume equated strength versus the rep range studies. So they basically did like 7 sets of 3 reps and then 3 by 10, or I think it was like 3 by 10 or something. And it was equivalent volume. The volume was the same, like sets times reps times weight was the same between 2 groups. And one group trained like that and the other group trained another way. And they got the same hypertrophy result because the volume was equivalent. What they found was, and people were like, oh, see, you can train for strength and size. But Brad Schoenfeld was like, he's like, read the discussion. Because in the discussion, they noted that the perceived rating of effort and burden on the 7 sets of 3 group, they were like, we're going to die if you don't end the study. Like, I feel like total shit. And the 3 by 10 group kept asking for more volume because they were like, this is the easiest thing ever. To get the same hypertrophy, but we're nowhere near their MRVs. And the other group was struggling to stay alive. So if you want to do size work with sets of 5, be my guest. It's a shitty way to put on size. As soon as you go to sets of 10, sets of 12, you're going to realize how much you've been missing out and how much more volume you could potentially do, and thus more growth. That's it. And he says, thanks. P.S. Are there any good superheroes who got their status from just being a badass, working hard, and no special help? I've got one. Goku.
Yeah. It took brain damage to bring out his great.
Yeah, exactly. He actually got fucked. And then it says, even Iron Man and Batman were both essentially trust fund babies. Catwoman? Yeah, Catwoman was like a fucking hooker. And she just got tired of the patriarchy and slapped that bitch in the face.
I will say, though, that in defense of Batman, and even, I guess, Iron Man to some degree, but Batman in particular, he did not become a superhero because of the resources he had from his trust fund money. He became a bad motherfucker and then had more opportunities and executed his white privilege with all that money. Right. But let's not discount the transcendence and the skills that he had to get along the way.
The thing is, if you actually read the comics, and if you actually read the comics, Batman gets put back to zero financially, morally, physically, a ton by his biggest villains, and he always crawls to the fucking gutter to get back up and fucks everyone over. Batman's most powerful asset is his fucking willpower, and everyone knows it, which is why what's his name, Waller, Amanda Waller herself, there's the only person she ever feared and respected was fucking Bruce Wayne.
I liked fat Amanda Waller. I appreciate the new sexy one that they put out.
Fuck that.
But I like fat Waller. She's the best.
I've been watching all of the Justice Leagues with Crystal, Amanda Waller. Crystal loves that bitch. She just calls the fucking shots. Shot Lex Luthor with a fucking gun. It's incredible.
I love the not just the double cross, but like the triple quadruple cross.
She's got it all figured out, dude. I swear to God, if I was ever working with urban youth, and I had I was talking to like a young black girl and trying to give her like characters to look up to, I'd be like, just look up Amanda Waller, you'll never be disappointed. Can you imagine being like a young black girl reading about Amanda Waller? I'd be like, oh my God, she fucked everyone over. It was amazing.
She's basically like if Trump was really smart and competent.
Yep,
I think that's fair.
And an overweight black woman.
Yeah, well, yeah, that too.
He's already halfway to being a woman and definitely overweight. So she's thick. She's thicker than thick. All right. So let's look at our live stream here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what was that? That was from what's his name? Rick and Morty, right?
Yeah.
All right. I'll start. Michael Karam says, hello, doctors. I have a question about rep ranges. From 6 to 20 reps, it's the same. So it's best to count sets, right, for counting volume, but does it differ with the look of how muscles grow? I mean, doing 5 by 8 reps will grow the muscle with more dense look. on 5x16? I'm asking this because when I look to people who train heavy with low reps, look more dense muscles, not bulky and round muscles. Jeff Willett, Skip LaCour, for example. So I like to know if this is Shane Down or something else. My first answer is I'm not sure. My second answer is it seems highly unlikely that it'll affect external morphology. I don't think it's going to affect dick. But
I think
James,
I was going to say it's probably more related to the individual's fiber typing, right? They just tend to respond.
Muscle architecture.
Yeah. So it's not that like 6 is better than 12, but for somebody who's really fast twitch dominant, training at like 6 to 8 is just more productive than training at 12 to 18.
Yep. I also never knew what people meant by dense look. I actually don't know what that means.
I'm not sure either. I think they just get confused when people are lean and when they're not lean.
There you go.
No, seriously, you know what I mean? Like when you
sure.
Go like, dude, did you get bigger? You're like, no, I actually got smaller. And they're like, what?
Jeff Willett.
I just look better.
Jeff Willett was a natural actually, and he's a fucking got like unreal retardo lean. So he looked fucking sweet. All right, Mariana Perdomo says, Kyle here. What can you tell me about the barbell hack squat? Because I don't always have access to machines.
The behind the back one?
Yeah, such as leg press. I've been using the barbell hack squat as my secondary squat movement. It isn't included as an option on MPT, so I'm curious to know what is an effective movement. I do this exercise in weightlifting shoes while standing on a plate to extend the range of motion. What are the mechanical considerations for the lift, back angle, hand positioning, foot positioning? I don't do the barbell hack squat because I think it's a fucking ridiculous, awful movement. So I don't know when to comment. James?
I feel the same way. I've tried to do it and I could never get it to work for me. And it might just be my anthropometry or whatever. What I would suggest, if you want something that's a little more quad dominant, maybe from the floor, you can do snatch grip deadlift, like a real weightlifting stance. And that's a hell of a lot of quad work, believe it or not, because you just have to squat down there so deep. So that would be a good alternative. Outside of that, playing with some variations in your squat. I've actually been fucking around with like a makeshift belt squat at home. I'll put a 45 and a 35-pound bumper down and just do belt squats. And that's been rocking my world after regular barbell squats. So there's other options out there. I hate that one in particular. I don't want to bias you, but I just don't see any use for it.
Yep. All right. David Brown says, greeting fellow Sith Lords. Finally, someone addresses us by our formal titles. Background. Oh, James, do you want to do the song really quick with me?
Sure. What do you got? Really good. I like that music.
Yeah. I think Jared Feather's favorite character in any movie ever is Darth Maul, and that scares me.
Darth Maul's cool. I think he actually comes back to life after being chopped in half.
That is correct, and that is in the Clone Wars.
Fuck. It's gnarly.
It's actually really difficult to watch because he's not sane, and he looks like he's in a lot of mental anguish. It's really tough.
Oof. He's a cool character. Not much development there, but cool.
For sure. All right. Background, intermediate off-season physique. Number 1, Mike, you suggested that during strength/maintenance phases, I should utilize this physique template, but increase the 10 RMs so that I can progress in strength. Just curious if I should still utilize the same RARs. For instance, if I complete the set, should I be getting about 3 to 5 reps per set with 3 RR in week 1 to make decent progress? Yes. Is there a good indicator of MEV since pumps and soreness will be diminished isocaloric state from the style of training? Yes, I think the MEV for strength training is, do you feel like it felt like training? There's not much, though. The good thing about strength training is it's very easily to objectively see if you're progressing or not. So the MEV kind of solves its own problems. But I would say that that's the best indicator of MEV. Just start with something remember, also, there's not supposed to be a huge progression in strength training. Just start with something that's for sure above your MEV and then modulate by intensity a little bit more than anything else.
Yeah, I don't think pump might not be a great indicator for that particular situation. One thing I would keep an eye on is how your technique feels. And that'll be a really good proxy where you can just say like, oh man, my technique felt really good. I didn't see any breakdown or any struggle in technique. Then you say, oh, okay, maybe go up a little bit until you start to feel a little struggle, but still have good technique.
Yep. Number 2, I'm struggling with quantifying the meaning of a hard set. For instance, if we say that you did 3 reps at a given intensity with 3 reps in reserve, and then did 10 reps with 3 RR, then could we theoretically say both were hard sets?
On a relative scale, yes. On an absolute scale, it's different.
Yeah, they're relatively both hard. Yeah. However, when it comes to quantifying MEV to MRV, then it seems that the number of sets required could potentially vary across intensities. Yes, that's correct. For each body part. If so, can we account for this difference as a variation in fiber type distributions of muscle groups? In part.
Possibly, a little bit, yeah.
Should a physique athlete try and determine their MEV to MRV in various rep ranges, or does it appear to be relatively stable? So remember, the most stable thing is that sets that are heavier cause more fatigue than sets that are lighter. So that kind of between sets of 6 and 20 reps kind of adjust so that hard sets is really a proxy for volume, because the reps and the weight kind of cancel each other out to some extent, fatigue-wise and stimulus-wise. So I think for that reason, you can just use set numbers and not worry about particular rep ranges. Although a more advanced athlete will know, like James knows how many sets of 10 to 12 his quads can handle and how many sets of 5 his quads can handle. But he's been training for decades, basically. So it's not a super valuable thing to have because it's very nitty gritty, but you will eventually learn it and it'll keep your training 95% good as opposed to 90% good. James?
Solid. Yeah. It's just a little bit of trial and error. And it's just data that you collect over time, either up here in your head, or if you write it down, put it in an app or something, it's really useful. Yeah. And you'll find, like you can't accumulate for 4 weeks at a time when you switch to strength. Maybe you can take big intensity jumps and all these other things. So it's just a little trial and error.
Yeah, it's not super important. It's a very, very small derivation of particularities now.
Yeah.
Number 3, I recently completed a chest back specialization mesocycle in the 12 to 20 rep range. Oof. My back was noticeably sore following each back training day. My chest didn't get sore until week 3, 4-to-1 paradigm. Where my reps sky high, where my reps, what the fuck? Where my reps skyrocketed only to, I read high for no reason, only to crash and burn at week 4. I assume I surpassed my MRV for chest. Is this decent evidence that my chest is more fast twitch dominant and is advisable to predominantly utilize roll reps for chest while simultaneously doing high reps for back? Yes, I actually think this is very good evidence. Fiber types aside, that your chest for some reason benefits from lower, slightly lower volume, higher intensity training. I would do exactly the same thing. My chest is super fast twitch and loves heavy training and doesn't like super high rep training, and I would do exactly the same thing you did. I'd feel shit, and then my chest would get super tired and just overreach. Whereas if I started heavier, my chest would feel something, feel a little more, and then overreach, which is what it's supposed to do. And it says, thanks for reading my novel and for having Super Saiyan power levels greater than 9,000 is, well, I think this came out wrong, about 5,300,000,000. That's actually right around Dragon Ball GT power levels, which is really good reference. I really, really appreciate that, David. Oh, this comment made my night. P.S. You guys mentioned you don't know why people refer to the vastus medialis as VMO. I have a master's degree in human anatomy. I didn't even know what the hell a VMO was. Dude, it's like a little it's like a little belonging term where you say it just to tell people you're cool and you know anatomy, whereas no anatomy people actually use that term. Like it's I literally read an article. It's very recent. It's by no means clear that you can refer to the oblique fibers of the vastus medialis as the obliquus. Like not all anatomists even agree that that should be the case. So when people say VMO, they just shut up, just say VM. But it's pedantic stupidity.
Yeah.
Way.
Yeah.
All right. Daniel Hacker says, what are the actual benefits of the box jump?
Not landing. That's exactly what it is. No, I'm dead serious.
Yeah, that's actually a very good benefit. I know the quick, fast development and enhanced vertical power, but is there more? Secondly, an athlete really getting something out of jumping on a really high boxes or just for attention of the cameras? Mostly for attention. I'm talking 45 inches and higher.
Sorry.
You know the real. Sorry. Let me finish this question, James.
Yeah.
Really quick. You know the real jungle cats out there. Would you say keeping a box at a moderate height, maybe 24 to 36 is best? Maybe adding a light dumbbell or vest when progression is appropriate is the best use of this exercise? What is the best protocol to use this exercise in a normal program? Random. I know. James, I think you're just go ahead and explain what the benefits of not landing are.
So the thing is, the box jump is not, there's nothing magical about the box jump, realistically. What is good for athletes is jumping fast, hard, and high. Jumping is good, right? It's the landing that tends to take a bit of a toll. So the box jump gives you an opportunity to pick your feet up and not have the really big acceleration back to the ground and the impact of hitting the ground. Right. And so you can actually do the same thing if you have like what's it called? A high jump mat. You can just have your athletes do like jumps into the mat and just land softly. Or if you have like bouncy balls or something you can jump on, same exact idea, right? Where you're just taking the stress of the impact out, which is going to be a large contributor to the MRV in the legs in particular, and actually even the spine to some extent. So what I would say though is the problem that you run into with doing the box jump is when you have it set really high, like you see in some of those crazy videos, the risk of injury goes up like exponentially, because if you miss, now you're going to either take it on the face, or you're going to fall off the box, or you're going to cut your shins or your legs open. So what I would say is you can individualize this to a large degree, but jumping high is a good thing. Taking the stress of landing down is a good thing. So having a box height that is challenging, but there's plenty of wiggle room to overshoot is a good idea. So what that means is you can ask your athlete to make a maximal jump where they actually exceed the height of the box and just come down a little bit less than they normally would do. I think that's awesome. Do you need to have the box height set for the actual maximal height that they're going to achieve each time? No way. You're just asking for trouble. They're going to get 2 good jumps at the most, and then after that, they're going to start biffing, right? So what I would say is just get them in the habit of jumping really high. And if they jump over the actual height of the box that you have set up, who cares? That's great. They still made a maximal jump effort, and the landing is less hard than it was had they come all the way to the ground. So there's no need to set up 45-inch box for most people unless they can consistently clear 45 inches all the time, which unless they're a superstar, most people can't do that. So for me, I would set a box between like 2 and 3 feet, like you suggested, and let them exceed that if they need to.
Yeah, just make sure they're not jumping to the box, and then you're good.
Yeah.
Daniel Hacker also says, also, I know you might be biased, but just how epic is Mike Stone's book? I mean, I don't know about epic. It's a good book, but James?
Yeah, epic, I don't know. I mean, like in terms of the content, it's epic. In terms of readability and fun, it's probably one of the worst. I don't know what it's not like
you'll learn a lot.
You'll learn a lot. Yeah. I would say it's akin to like a Steven Pinker book where you're like, wow, this is so informative, but I'm kind of snoozing out here a little bit.
Yeah. You watch your fucking mouth, James. All right.
I just finished the audiobook, and I mean, I loved it. I would recommend it to anyone.
On the violence?
It's dry. Yeah, it's dry.
He's nothing but thorough.
It's very thorough, very good, but like I said, a little dry.
Yeah. I like the debates people had about that book where like left-wingers were like, this is wrong. And he's like, you're not qualified to have this debate. And they're like, you didn't cite the following statistic. He's like, that's because it was outdated because I used these 10 others. And they're like, God damn it, he just did more work than we did.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Or like that actually doesn't account for these other factors which you failed to.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is not my first rodeo. I spent 2 years writing this book. I've thought of all these things you did in 15 minutes. All right, Katina DeJarnett, a last question, and I actually have to go super soon. Says, hey, docs, I'm near the end of a 12-week dieting phase for physique purposes, not performance. When entering the final couple of weeks of a cut, would it behoove one to skew the protein ratio a bit higher in relation to total calories for the minute benefit of increased thermic effect of food? Fuck no.
No. For hunger satiety, maybe.
Yes, right, exactly, possibly, but thermic effect is fucking garbage. For example, so she says, for example, my final digging macros are a SAD, or dieting macros are a SAD 120 protein, 100 carbs, 25 fats. Would a change in ratio to say 160 protein, 80 carbs, 15 fats result in any sort of tangible increase in metabolic rate TF? No. And this is really splitting hairs because both versions are calorically the same, but hey, seems like something I've seen physique coaches like Cliff Wilson use on the clients for the dig. Thanks for your time. I think Cliff Wilson probably, I don't know what he says he uses it for, but it's probably the fat or the satiety stuff. We'll tell you guys, here's a real big news flash on the thermic effect of food. Protein does not provide you with 4 calories per gram. It's actually like 6.5 calories per gram. Why do they write 4 on the label? Because that already takes the thermic effect of food into account.
Yes.
So when you see 4 calories per gram, that is already assuming a thermic effect of 0. So don't even worry about it because it's already taken care of for you in the calculations.
Yep. Nothing to it.
So.
All right. Well, I think Mike's got to cut out, folks. We got through all the questions. We are done. Mike, are you good for next week? Same time and same bat channel?
Same bat time, same bat channel.
All right, cool. All right, guys, we're going to sign off for now. Thanks for submitting all your questions, and we will talk to you next week.
Peace, homies.